Okay, we're live from Yankee Stadium here at the Yankees workout day right before the ALCS. Mark Hale here with George King, Joel Sherman, Brian Costello, and Mike Vaccaro. We just finished with Joe Girardi's press conference, and not too much revealed as far as the order of rotation. He said they're going to meet after today's workout and go from there. George, what's your take as far as who you think is going to pitch Game 2, Game 3, the way this series goes against the Rangers?
I would guess that he'd pitch Hughes in 2 and Pettit in 3, only because Pettit will be home here. And the way they both pitch very well, so I think that that's the way he'll go.
You think that's the right way to go, or?
Yeah, they both pitch well, and Game 3 is a very important game in a 7-game series, so I think you pitch the guy that you're most comfortable with in Game 3, and that'd be Pettit.
Obviously, last night, Game 5, the Rangers beat the Rays to eliminate them. Is that a better matchup for the Yankees, worse matchup for the Yankees? Who do you think they'd rather play?
I think they'd rather play the Rays. They know them better. And even though they do the one thing that really upsets the Yankees, they run, and they run a lot. I think they were 18 for 19 in stolen bases against the Yankees this year at Tampa. We saw last night, Texas is a pretty aggressive team. They scored from second base on 2 ground ball outs. I don't think I'd ever seen that in a game. And there's a Cliff Lee factor. Just to answer the question you asked George, because I think it's affected by that, is why do you start Andy Pettit in Game 3? Because you need to line up Andy Pettit in 3 and 7, because he won't be intimidated by pitching against Cliff Lee. And at this point, I think you have to think about who will not be intimidated. We're talking about a guy on one of the greatest postseason runs in the history of the sport, and I think it would almost be serving food to the Sharks to send either Burnett out there or even a recently effective but young and inexperienced Phil Hughes. Andy Pettit has pitched the most games in postseason history, started them. He might not be as good as Cliff Lee, but he's the perfect guy to handle everything that's going to come pitching in Game 3 and potentially a Game 7 against Cliff Lee.
I mean, this already feels a little bit like it's the Yankees versus the Cliff Lees, doesn't it? I mean, that's every question seems to be about Cliff Lee, and every issue seems to be about how do they go against Cliff Lee.
You know, it feels a little, and Mike Vaccaro would be the perfect person to talk about this. I was thinking about it last night. It is feeling a little bit like Mike Scott sitting in Game 7 in 1986 for the Astros, and the Mets knowing they better win this thing in 6 because they're not going to win in 7. And right now, the Yankees don't have home field advantage, and it feels like they better figure out how to win this thing in 6, probably having to concede Game 3 and starting with 2 games on the road, and with A.J. Burnett sitting in Game 4. So there's kind of a lot of hurdles.
You almost got to win 1, 2, 5, and 6.
Right. There's a lot of hurdles on the way to kind of heaven for them.
What do you think, Vac? If you were the Yankees, would you think Tampa would have been a better matchup as well?
I do, because the thing about the Rangers is that, one thing, they've had recent successes against them. They won 4-5 against them in the 2 series in Arlington the last couple of months of the season. And also, you have better hitters. And I do think that we saw the Twins. I think that the Twins are non-competitive with the Yankees because once you got past the 5-hole in their lineup, there was nothing to worry about again until the lineup turned over again. I think the Rangers have a lot deeper lineup, and they have Cliff Lee. And I think the thing that really, if you're the Rangers, I think if you can just get a split at home, how many times do you think that you'd be happy with a split at home? But think about what happens if you have a split at home. You get a split at home, you get Cliff Lee in Game 3, and possibly facing A.J. Burnett in Game 4. I mean, it's a really small hurdle to want to think about. It's a real small goal to want to achieve. And so I think the Rangers right now have a lot of things going in that direction.
You guys both brought up Burnett. Brian wrote a good story on A.J. today. How big of a concern is A.J. in the series in your mind?
I think he's probably their biggest concern, and especially if they're down 2-1 or 3-0, going into that, they're going to have to make a decision whether to bring back CC on 3 days, and I think he's the major issue for them going in here. They're saying all the right things, but it kind of sounds like everyone here is trying to convince themselves that they believe AJ can do it, but he's given them no reason to for months now, and I think that's going to be their biggest issue here.
George, when you look at the Yankee bullpen for this series, they obviously didn't use Jabba at all against the Twins in the first round. Do you think Jabba gets used more, or do you think they're trying to steer themselves away from using him, especially in an important spot?
If they don't need him before the 7th inning, I don't see them any reason why they would use him. I mean, unless the other guys pitch multiple innings and they need Jabba Chamberlain. But Jabba Chamberlain's he's on the way to being Brian Bruni if he's not there already. I mean, you look at his numbers, and Bruni struck out a lot of guys too, threw hard, but anything, talk about AJ in the last month and a half, what's he done for anybody? But what's this guy done? So I think he'll be used, but it's not going to be 2 outs in the 7th or the 8th.
Joel, you've got scouting reports that are going to be coming out for the special section that we're doing here. When you look at this series, is there one matchup, two matchups that you think almost might define how the series goes?
Yeah, first of all, I want to point out that on Jabba Chamberlain's business card, it now says on the way to being Brian Bruni. And I think just matchups, just for matchups in this series, Jabba Chamberlain's one of those ones is his worst numbers in his career are against this team, are against Texas. They're bad up and down their lineup. And if he didn't play against Minnesota, I see a hard case for bringing him into big spots in this series. Right-handed relief is very important for the Yankees. Texas has one big left-handed hitter in Hamilton. Boone Logan is going to get him a few times in this series. It's going to be can Boone Logan do to Josh Hamilton what Damaso Marte did to some big lefty hitters late last season? But specifically, the rest of the power, the Victor Cruzes, the Michael Youngs, the Ian Kinslers, they're all right-handed. Vladimir Guerrero, and so I think a key guy in the series is going to be David Robertson. Kerry Wood's worst numbers in his career against Vladimir Guerrero, so David Robinson's going to get him. And Robinson actually, I think, has even held Hamilton to 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. So he's going to be an important guy in the series. And if I just had to point out something, because again, we were talking about that home field and early on, C.J. Wilson is vital in this series, right? The Yankees finished the season losing their last 9 games against lefty starters, but they won the games against Brian Dunsing and Francisco Lariano in the division series. The only bad game pitched by a lefty starter in that 9 to end the season was by C.J. Wilson. He pitched terrible against the Yankees. The Yankees do the one thing that upsets C.J. Wilson. They take a lot of pitches and they force him into the strike zone. C.J. Wilson dominated the Rays, who are also a patient team. Which C.J. Wilson shows up? Because if he dominates them and suddenly Texas is up 1-0 in this series, going to Game 2, that feels a little bit, again, I agree with Mike Vaccaro's point perfectly. It feels like house money because even if you split, you got Cliff Lee sitting in Game 3. And imagine the Yankee pressure if C.J. Wilson shuts them down in Game 1, the pressure the Yankees are going to feel against Colby Lewis in Game 2.
And that puts it on Phil Hughes as well. Last thing, guys, when we look at the NLCS, which will start on Saturday, Phillies against the Giants, any predictions here? What do you think? Everyone's talking about the pitching for this series. Those two teams, you know, with the aces that they tried out there. How do you guys see this series going?
I have a hard time seeing the Giants having enough hitting to actually get 4 wins. I think it's going to be a fun series to watch. I think the games when Lincecum is matched up against Halladay are going to be DVR-able games because they're going to be just perfect and wonderful October pitching matchups. But you know, when you throw out the starting pitching, which if it's not a push, it probably is a little bit favors the Phillies. I just think the Phillies have just an overwhelming advantage offensively, and you know when you get into the bullpen, I think that's going to make its way into making it Phillies in 5.
Right.
I think Phillies Yankees is starting to feel like Lakers Celtics from the 80s. You know, I just feel like we're heading toward that. You know, it feels like the last 3 years, you know, the Phillies have just turned the whole franchise around, and now the Yankees are back to where they were. So I just think the Phillies have too much. I'll go Phillies in 6.
Joel?
Yeah, I think the problem for the Giants are that the Phillies are the toughest-minded team, at least in the National League, if not in the whole sport, and they'll figure out a way to dent the starting pitching. They'll do enough. They always do enough. They're going to get there. I think they have a lot easier time getting there than the Yankees. I think the way this series sets up, it's crazy that an ace could be pitching in Game 3, and that feels like bigger problems for the Yankees than the ace pitching in Game 1 because it sets up. I think the Phillies cakewalk through the Giants, and I think the Yankees get there, but I think they're gonna have to get there like the '86 Mets with some stunning Game 6 kind of win to stay out of Game 7.
Bob Nepper and Dave Smith.
I think the Giants didn't hit all year long. They're not going to start hitting against that pitching. And I would say the Yankees in 7, but I wouldn't be shocked if it didn't happen that way.
All right, I'll go Texas in 7, Phillies in 5. I want to thank George, Joel, Brian, and Vac. We'll have another video blog for you guys soon. Enjoy the series.